Yes, I had Lyme. And in 1992, I was given the good news by an AIDS doctor. Can you imagine? That's kind of an odd place to be in a waiting room when I'm sitting the only woman with 9 men waiting for my diagnosis. And what I was being tested for was not AIDS. I did not have AIDS. I wouldn't be here if I had AIDS. I wasn't even being tested for Lyme. The only test that they had available at the time was syphilis. Yeah, I know. I came up positive. Because a syphilis is the same shape as a Lyme bacteria. It's a spirochete. So my doctor said to me, he said, okay, Liz, before you deck your husband in the parking lot, he said, you don't have syphilis, you have Lyme. And what we're going to do is we're going to put you on 3 months of antibiotics and you're going to be cured. Does everybody like to hear the C word? Not the cancer word, but the C word, cured, right? So I was all for that. So I jumped on that bandwagon. I started with 800 milligrams of Suprax 3 times a day. Yvette, who's a pharmacist, is that a nuclear bomb or what? Okay? I was on that for 3 months. I was dragging my intestines behind me. All right, it was so bad. Okay, and so what Louie wanted me to kind of unpack for you over the next 2 days is my Lyme disease story kind of wrapped in with 2 conditions. One talking about digestion, and tomorrow we're going to talk about adrenal glands. What I want you to understand is you, as distributors, if you can function on the area of the body that starts at the bottom of the rib cage to the top of the hip bones, you're going to accomplish a lot in your customers' lives. And that area of the body is probably the most important area when it comes to chronic disease. Did you know that because of the lymphoid tissue that you have in the small intestine, that 85% of the cells of your immune system are packed in there? Can you see why I didn't have a cure for 16 years after given 2,400 milligrams of Suprax over 3 months? Right? What do you think my small intestine looked like? It looked like a superhighway. It probably had no villi, it had no integrity, had no probiotics, it had nothing. And so when you take your immune system down, how do you think that your years are going to be after that? Not great. So here's what happened to me. When you are devoid, okay, of your function of your small intestine through something like antibiotics, birth control pills can do it, steroids, a lot of pharmaceutical drugs, chemotherapy can do the same thing that antibiotics do, you are going to have a miserable time. So over the next 12 years, I spent my time running from one doctor to another for migraines, for vertigo, for dizziness, for neuropathy. I had pains in places you shouldn't have had pains. I had chronic yeast infections, UTIs. I had thrush in my mouth. And every time I went to a doctor, they did this. They were not exercising. It's called medical shoulder shrugging. Every time I went, I'm like, what's wrong with my head? Well, we'll do a scan. Well, you have a brain, but we don't know what's wrong with you. So that, okay, that was not what I wanted to hear. What's wrong with my feet? Why do my feet hurt so badly? Off to a podiatrist. Well, it's not anything serious, but we don't know what it is. Why do I twitch so badly that I sit up in the middle of the night and frighten my husband, and then when he goes to push me down, my legs come up, okay? That was what my 12 years was like. And in the middle of that, I decided to have a couple of children and gave them Lyme disease as well. That's the gift that keeps on giving. Yes, it passes. It requires a 400 magnification microscope to see the spirochete. It passes. The placenta is not a cement wall. It's a cheesecloth. It's a barrier, but it's not a cement wall. So children do get born with Lyme, and I had 2 of them born with Lyme. So packed on top of all of that, right? I had 2 really sick kids. I had one daughter who decided to get all on her own. That was a great accomplishment. So there's 4 of us. So that was what my 12 years looked like, okay? Didn't know what was going on. Was in bed by 7 o'clock. Wasn't a wife, hardly a mother, right? It's a horrible place to be. And in 2004, I had a friend of mine tap me on the shoulder. She said, Liz, she said, you've got Lyme. I said, no, I don't have Lyme. I must have a brain tumor, or I've got vertigo, or I've got neuropathy, but it's not Lyme. Remember, I was cured. She said, no, you have Lyme, and you need to go back. I said, all right, fine, I'll go. Just to satisfy you, I'll go. And I had a whole other bunch of blood work done. Turns out I still had Lyme. Never went away in all those 12 years. Never, ever went away. And in that 12 years, not only did I try the antibiotics that I did in 1992, but I tried everything else. Aromatherapy. I tried eating grass. I tried everything you can imagine. I did, I don't know. If somebody told me I had to stand on my head for 20 minutes a day, I would have done that. Nothing worked. We spent the equivalent of one college one child's private school, college education, and treatment for just me. All right, that's about $120,000 over those 12 years, and nothing worked. So there I was back in a Lyme doctor's office with my 3 children, and we started on treatment again. And what did she do? What do you think she did? She put me back on antibiotics, right? I didn't know. Remember, I'm a housewife, I'm a mother, I'm a farmer, I'm not a nutritionist. I have no idea. And this is not, are there any medical doctors in here? I'm not here to malign you at all, because if I have a compound fracture, I'm not going to my chiropractor. I'm going to the emergency room, okay? They're doing the best that they can with the information that they have. So what did they do? They put me back on antibiotics in 2004, and guess what happened? It failed. Of course it failed. And guess what we did in 2005? We did it again. It failed. Why do you think it failed? Because antibiotics destroy the gut function. The most important thing that you can do to protect your health. And you, as distributors, need to make sure that you address gut function in your customers first. First, most important thing that you can do. So there I was in 2005. I'd had 2 failed treatments, and my husband, who's a scientist and happens to own an international chemical company, we're always in a race with GNLD. You guys are in how many countries? 56? We beat you. We're in 60. And it used to be this joke between Roger and my husband Andy every year. It's like, how many countries? 57. We're in 58 because we were both started in 1958. So my husband, the scientist, would take me to all of these conferences, these Lyme disease conferences constantly. And do you know what I heard? I heard one thing out of the thousands of dollars that we spent. If you can get your immune system functioning and moving in the right direction, you'll cure this disease. So I would write on my binder, immune. And then I would leave it at that. And I would look at my husband, who's a smart scientist, and I'd say, well, what do I do about that? He said, I don't know. I have no idea. I had no idea that I was doing more damage to myself than anything else. One conference that I was at had a microphone. I actually went up to rest in my room, and it was a memorial of all the people who had died. That was really sad. I came back, my husband was like this. I'm like, what's wrong? He goes, nothing. I said, what just happened? Well, I was going, nothing. Nothing happened. And I found out later that people were, my husband died of the disease, I lost a child, I lost an aunt. And I think he started to realize how serious this was. And that's when we started to look in, what do we do to protect my immune system? The one good thing that my doctor did for me in 2004 was she said, Liz, she said, we need to look at your diet. I said, oh, well, I have a great diet. I have Breyer's ice cream in my freezer. I have Oreo cookies to go with it. And occasionally I eat goldfish, right? Doesn't that sound like a standard diet? Who has that diet? Come on, admit to it. Okay, thank you. Don't put me up here alone thinking that I'm the only one who had a goldfish, okay? So that was my standard diet. And she said, Liz, we have to change your diet. We have to get you have to eat organic. I didn't know what organic was. Now, I did have a farm, but at the time we were raising thoroughbreds. And I was feeding them all garbage that I could find, right? Fed them cheaply, got them out on the track. That was my only goal, to do that. And so we didn't care about that. But she says, you have to eat organic, and you have to get rid of GMOs. I had to look that up, all right? I didn't know what GMOs were. I had to get all the antibiotics and estrogens out of my diet, didn't know what that was. And so I had this miraculous turnover in my diet. And the other thing that she said to me, she said, when you eat a food that you are intolerant to, guess what it does to your immune system? It distracts it. So we went off for a lot of testing and it turned out to be allergic to gluten, dairy, and I say everybody's allergic to sugar. Just get off the stuff, it's poison. So, because what happens is when you eat a food that you can't tolerate, your immune system does this, because you're gonna have more problems with a food than you are anything else, right? Think anaphylactic shock. So meanwhile, my immune system is suppressed and my Lyme bacteria is having a party, isn't it? Right? And that can be said for cancer. That can be said for a lot of diseases. So it is so important to address the diet, to address your diet. Louis has done you a great favor by talking about juicing, telling you about GMOs. All right, everybody raise your hand. Who knows about GMOs? I better see every single hand going up by now. Okay, and those of you who don't, go talk to Louis. He'll tell you all about it, because I'm going to bed. All right? So here I was, I've got this new diet, but I still have this wrecked gut, don't I? All right? I still didn't know about things like fermentation. I still had no idea what you do to heal the gut and how you get over that. So So what I did do is in 2005, when my Lyme doctor looked at me and I'd now relapsed for the third time, she said, Liz, she said, what do you want to do? I said, I don't want to do anything. I said, why am I going to be like a dog returning to vomit, right? Isn't that a biblical thing? Can't we read that? Why do I want to go back to the very thing that has done nothing for me in 12 years? I said, no offense, but I'm leaving. She says, what are you going to do? I said, I have no idea. I'll let you know. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew that I had to change my diet. I still hadn't heard about GNLD, but what I did do is I spent 2 years working on the function of my gut by ridding my body naturally of candida. It took that long to do it. Once you have systemic yeast, it is not an easy fix. If you're interested in looking for a great candida plan, there's a website called candidaplan.com by Dr. Jeffrey McCombs. It's a home run, 100% will cure your candida. I haven't had a problem yet in a client who I put on that diet. It's phenomenal. And that's what I did. That was a 4-month intensive diet, and I got rid of my candida. And so that was one thing that was done, but I still was not cured of the disease. And so I was still wondering what I needed to do. So then I found a doctor named Dr. Rex Russell. Has anybody heard of him? He wrote a book called What the Bible Says About Healthy Living. And he talks about 3 principles that he talks about in there. And he says, you eat what God created, okay? You do not change what God created. And then you don't make food an idol. But he also worked through the Levitical principles. We are not held under the law anymore because we are freed by grace. But yet it's always interesting to me as to why God kept that information in there. And do you know that science has proven almost 90% of those Levitical laws? So that was the next change that I made, was I ate Levitically. So I didn't have bacon for 10 years. I missed bacon. I do eat bacon now because we have now changed our farm over. It's totally organic. We raise all heritage animals, and I raised my first pastured hog last year. I've never had such good bacon in my whole life. I won't share my bacon with anybody. And if you come over for breakfast and we're having scrambled eggs and bacon, you're just getting eggs. You're not getting my bacon because I spent 10 years not eating bacon. So I applied those principles, and I started to get better. That is a book that you need to get, What the Bible Says About Healthy Living by Dr. Rex Russell. And I'm going to end, because tomorrow I get to continue. But here's where I want to leave you. Don't be disappointed. I'll be back. Here's where I want to leave you, is that I'm now a nutritionist and a naturopathic doctor, and I have the great privilege of working with a lot of people. But what I want to tell you is that we serve a sovereign God. All right? And he is fully in charge of giving us the number of days that we have, right? But our responsibility is when we wake up in the morning and we put our feet on the floor and we should be saying, good morning, Lord, and not, oh, Lord, it's morning, right? We have a responsibility every single day to make the right kinds of choices in our nutrition and our supplements, which I'll unpack and get more for you tomorrow about that, to make the right kind of decision that's going to bring healing to our body and to honor and glorify the Lord. I have to tell you, thank you. Thank you. I've had the privilege and the great sadness of ushering a number of my clients into the arms of the Lord. It's one of the saddest things I've ever had to do in my practice. But it is a privilege to remind them of who Jesus is as they slip into that space. But I want you to understand that, I have been given the great gift of complete healing. And that's really why I'm here. Honestly, where I really want to be is back on my farm, taking care of my chickens, hanging out with my kids, cooking for my husband, and eating bacon. But I feel like I am called to minister. And that's why I do what I do. But so I hope that you walk away with understanding that digestion is important, but God is sovereign, and that we have a responsibility. Take care, and God bless.